I'll be addressing the Guatemalan developmental story and setting on this trajectory of understanding its geography, values, factor endowments and institutions, and how overall global aid, especially from the United States, um, has led to certain developmental outcomes. Here we will be discussing the geography, low latitude Central American country, 60% of it being rainforest, highly humid, um, and the soils typically of these rainforests are very low in nutritional value. The pH balances are different from those found in more um, higher latitudes. So this is sort of stymies growth and puts countries like this, like Guatemala, on a different trajectory. The values of Guatemala stem from its mixed Native American and Spanish extraction, and these values tend to be communitarian, um, socialized, so sort of more socialized or communitarian religiosity, with an emphasis on sort of traditional family structures, extended family structures, and this has a direct influence on the political development and the institutional development of Guatemala. Ongoing ethnic divisions and the trust with regards to the government are also very important. As Ladino mixed race populations are more likely to trust the government, and Native American populations are least likely to trust the government. Factor endowments involve literacy, transportation, and agriculture. All of these three metrics have increased through a variety of mechanisms over the last 100 years. Literacy has increased almost 100-fold from about 8% to about 87% as of 2024. Transportation and agriculture become much more mechanized, modernized. Agriculture, surprisingly enough, this mechanized, modernized agriculture has actually been able to expand to sort of the drier, warmer climates of Guatemala and sort of bring that commercialized agriculture to places that otherwise wouldn't have existed. GDP per capita, despite it being one of the largest economies in Central America, that is in the middling rank, you could say, in terms of economies. With the smaller economy of Costa Rica far outstripping it, and it being more in line with its um, El Salvadorian sort of colleague. We see that the political economy highlights the employment and remittances, particularly of Guatemala, with employment evolving from subsistence agriculture to more commercial agriculture, which relies on less people, um, to light manufacturing involved with maquilas. Remittances associated with this, with the migration of Guatemalans abroad, typically to the United States, also provides 20% of GDP, which provides a substantial sort of pool of capital that can be used for education and professional development, as shown by Adams in 2010. The rates of taxation have actually decreased over the last 30 years or so. We see that there's reduced corporate tax rates, and these reduced corporate tax rates allow for corporations, small businesses to develop and to transition and have more capital to use to employ people formally. So there's sort of a feedback loop that occurs here because as people become more um, transition from informal to formal, there's a larger tax base as opposed to a strictly informal system, which provides sort of minimal um, tax resources for the, the state. History of aid in Guatemala. The United States has a storied history of aid that primarily relate to stymieing narcotics flow as well as illegal migration, but also helping out and sort of trying to prevent food insecurity within the region. And USAID projects have in the past historically focused on these sorts of issues, primarily malnutrition and urban malnutrition, in fact. We see that, lastly, the liberalization and marketization that has occurred over the past 30 years has led to pretty substantial total GDP growth, total size of the economy, population growth. Um, Yet these outcomes do not necessarily represent total uplifting of the population or total development in all metrics related to sort of regional development or that typically what are considered metrics in developmental studies. Um, there's a lot of work to do, especially within addressing sort of famine, ongoing food insecurity, as well as indigenous rights and um, developmental um, potential and informality in the economy, which have great implications for development going forward.